well-preserved Melania, Trump is furious. The woman who wants to be First Lady is taking on several media outlets that she says printed false reports about her personal life. Now Melania is threatening to sue. Les Trent.
Joke. Funny thing to say. He's had a real problem with Elon from the beginning of this thing, but it's like he's in this leftist. He's in the most leftist thought bubble available, which is Hollywood. And, and I think also, he famously, there's some videos of him in blackface, and those came out, and he had apologized for them. And I think he took that hit and really doubled down in the other direction.
Jimmy Kimmel. For the fourth time, Kimmel hosted the Oscars before an adoring crowd of Hollywood stars who laughed and curried favor with the man who wore blackface so many times he's second only to Justin Trudeau in his fondness for the practice. Yes, some of the very same celebrities who wanted you to believe they were horrified after yours truly said in 2018 that people used to don dark makeup in order to imitate well-known black celebrities, and it wasn't a big deal.
Joe Rogan and Megyn Kelly just turned Jimmy Kimmel's worst nightmare into primetime comedy gold. After Melania Trump slammed him with a $100 million 0-cents defamation lawsuit, Rogan dissected his downfall with brutal honesty, while Megyn shredded his moral grandstanding like a legal brief on fire. The man who mocked from behind a desk now finds himself center stage, and this time, the punchlines are aimed at him. If Karma had a laugh track, this would be the season finale.
And you need to defend yourself all the time. As you may heard, I file a few lawsuits, and I'm in the court now because they accuse me of doing stuff that I never did in my life, and they wrote lies, and I will not allow that. I will fight till the end because I don't want that they damage my reputation and my name.
Late night comics would come on, and they occasionally would make us laugh, Piers. I mean, occasionally they understood that they were in the game of making everyone laugh. As you know, they've abandoned that game now, and they're just political operatives out there. Colbert, Kimmel, Seth Meyers, who I struggle to even mention that guy's name. He's such an absolute prick.
Joe Rogan didn't ease into it. He came in like a wrecking ball with jujitsu precision and podcast swagger. The moment the news dropped that Melania Trump had filed a $100 million 0-cent defamation lawsuit against Jimmy Kimmel, Joe didn't blink. He leaned forward, smirked, and dug in like it was an elk steak in the middle of a carnivore diet. For Rogan, the idea that Jimmy Kimmel, America's most televised virtue signaler, had provoked the former First Lady into a $100 million legal thunderclap was beyond comedy. It was poetic, like watching a court jester get hit with his own pie. The man who'd spent the last decade transforming late night into a crying session disguised as satire had finally gotten someone to stand up and say, "Enough."
Obviously, Kimmel's love of blackface was not a deal breaker for ABC, which already employs him as a late-night host, and which, in addition to its many blackface awards shows, also produced and promoted many shows and stars in blackface. It appears the real sin with blackface, you see, is talking about how standards on it have...
Joe started with Kimmel's evolution or devolution. He wasn't always like this. Once upon a time, Jimmy was the kind of guy who made jokes, had fun, and didn't take himself so seriously. Now, he'd become a full-time scold with a teleprompter and a complex. Rogan called it a spiritual makeover, sponsored by celebrity approval, and the result? A smug moralist, cosplaying as a comedian.
There's not a chance in hell that this is funny or gonna work. And when you see those flat, corny, late-night monologue jokes with no audience, Colbert, there's Jimmy Kimmel, there's Fallon. What they're doing is just like reading off of a teleprompter. So a bunch of really good joke writers wrote them some stuff, and then they're playing to the audience, and the audience is like laughing, so they get this feedback, and they know how to do that. They stand there, and there's applause signs. And then there's producers. There's the warm-up guy that's literally telling people to clap. They're like, okay, explain to the people. Okay, when Jimmy comes out, I want a big round of applause.
But nothing Joe pointed out was more absurd than Kimmel punching down and calling it activism. The guy who lectures the nation on empathy while mocking Melania's accent, as if that's brave. A first lady who, by the way, has never run for office, never held public power, becomes the target of Kimmel's warmed-over monologues. And when the legal gloves come off, Jimmy's team starts screaming about freedom of speech. like it's a new concept they just discovered.
Celebrities who wanted you to believe they were horrified after yours truly said in 2018 that people used to don dark makeup in order to imitate well-known black celebrities and it wasn't a big deal. Absolutely ate up the performance by Hollywood darling Mr. Kimmel, whose blackface costumes included his oft-repeated bit as basketball star Karl Malone.
Now, Karl Malone never seen no flying saucer himself, but if he do, that's gonna be a
And let's not forget Oprah.
Rogan chuckled at the irony. Here's a guy who hides behind comedy when he offends people, but hides behind victimhood the moment someone pushes back, Joe said. The only thing thinner than Kimmel's jokes these days is his skin. Melania filed a lawsuit, and suddenly Jimmy's got a team of attorneys and emotional support interns drafting statements about how satire is under attack. Then Joe got surgical. He pointed out that in the age of President Trump, yes, again, President Trump, Kimmel had made a career of mocking from the safety of a studio, aiming jokes at a family that couldn't punch back the way politicians can. And now that Melania has flipped the script with a legal sledgehammer, Jimmy's realizing the target can swing too. Joe didn't blame Melania. He said she'd probably had enough of being the go-to punchline for people who couldn't find an original take if it hit them over the head with a cue card. And the fact that it's happening now under Trump's second term made the timing even sweeter. Rogan imagined Jimmy sitting in his office panicking. Not about the lawsuit, but that someone might have finally outraged him. The man who cried on air to get points for being a truth teller was now facing a courtroom truth of his own. Joe didn't just find it funny, he found it righteous. Kimmel, the man who wanted to be the conscience of America, was now being called out by the woman he spent years mocking for a price that could buy half of Beverly Hills.
Jimmy Kimmel's a loser. I do Jimmy Kimmel. I did him a lot.
Yeah.
And he'd be standing on the sidewalk. Oh, sir, may I bring you in? He'd bring me in every time. The whole show is talking bad about Trump.
He called us doofuses when we had you on.
He's a group of in flat-brimmed hats.
Guess what? We
Ask
did
him how many.
5x what he did.
Ask him. Yeah, you do bigger. Yeah,
Yeah.
you do.
Then came Megyn Kelly, polished, unbothered, and fully loaded. She didn't just walk into the story, she stepped onto the stage like a prosecutor who'd waited years for this moment. Jimmy Kimmel wasn't just fair game, now he was an open case, and Megyn had a closing argument that would leave no jury unconvinced. She started with the hypocrisy. Jimmy Kimmel, the former man-child of late-night television, now hiding behind the cloak of justice, principles, and all the words he thinks sound noble when read aloud in front of a studio audience. But when you peel it back, Megyn said, it's all performance. Kimmel doesn't care about the truth. He cares about applause, and as long as he gets it, he'll throw anyone under the bus. Megyn made it personal, not about herself, but about the way Kimmel's made a career out of belittling Melania, painting her as some foreign accessory with no agency or intelligence. And yet here she was, flipping the chessboard and filing a lawsuit so financially terrifying that it could make Jimmy go from Hollywood elite to used Prius salesman overnight. Megyn mocked the fake bravery. Kimmel styles himself as the brave voice of reason, the guy who speaks truth to power. Except the power he chooses to speak to is a mother and former model who spent 8 years being judged not for policy, but for outfits and accents. Megyn said, if that's courage, then tweeting in all caps must be a revolutionary act.
You know how much it costs to produce Jimmy Kimmel's show? I guarantee you it's tens and tens of millions. It could be as much as 100 million. I have no idea. You know how much Tucker's video cost? Nothing. You know how much Jimmy Kimmel, how many people he gets tuning in on an average night? Just last week, his average was, in the overall, meaning all viewers, 1.5 million. In the key demo, 236,000. Tucker would have been embarrassed to pull that on any night he was on the Fox News channel.
But Megyn didn't stop at the lawsuit. She went into Kimmel's entire career arc. The transformation from beer-chugging bro comic to emotionally fragile political priest. The guy who used to host skits with girls on trampolines now lectures America about feminism between sponsored ads for streaming services. It's not growth, it's opportunism with makeup on, she said. She savored the timing. President Trump once again occupying the White House, and Jimmy Kimmel trying to play his greatest hits from 2017 like the country's stuck in a Groundhog Day rerun. The only problem? Nobody's laughing anymore. The jokes are stale. The targets are predictable, and now the targets are punching back with legal briefs instead of punchlines. Megan broke it down. This wasn't an attack on free speech. It was an accountability check. Kimmel thought he was above consequences. He thought a studio audience and a few claps from Twitter blue checks could shield him from reality. But now he's facing one of the most high-profile lawsuits in celebrity history, and the best he can do is pretend to be the victim of a system he thought he controlled? She even mocked the damage control. Kimmel's people are leaking sympathy stories, hinting at emotional stress, tapping their allies in media to paint this as a cautionary tale for comedians. Megan called it what? The panicked whimper of a man who never thought his own medicine would be administered back to him in a courtroom?
We're 3 times what Jimmy Kimmel gets. And Tucker's little basement video that he did from clearly like his cabin that he broadcasts out of Maine in literally has 21 million views. Okay? 21 million views. Whereas, as I point out, on ABC, a massive network that comes into your home for free, that you have to make no effort to find, at best, Jimmy Kimmel can get 1.5 million. He needs to have a little self-perspective before going out there and hurling these insults because he looks a little...
And don't forget, she said, this is all happening with Donald Trump back in office. The same Trump Jimmy swore would never return, the one he made his entire personality out of resisting. And now, Trump's calling the shots from the Oval. Melania's lawyered up, and Kimmel's brand of self-righteous sarcasm looks about as fresh as last week's monologue. Back to Rogan, who marveled at how Kimmel's downfall represented something bigger. This wasn't just about a lawsuit. It was about the death of a comedy class that forgot how to be funny. Joe said late night used to be dangerous, edgy, and irreverent. Now it's just one long therapy session with applause breaks, and Kimmel was the perfect symbol of that decay. Joe ripped into the self-serving sob stories, the monologues dressed up as activism, the fake outrage, the obvious pandering. Rogan said Kimmel became less of a comedian and more of a hall monitor with a writing staff, someone who traded laughs for likes, and now he was learning that moral superiority doesn't hold up under legal scrutiny. Megan returned for her closer, pointing out the larger hypocrisy of Hollywood. The same industry that claims to stand for women's empowerment let Kimmel belittle Melania Trump for years, and only now, with money on the line, are they suddenly silent? Not a peep from his peers, not a single "believe women" tweet? Because this woman, Megan said, isn't part of their club.
How weak and pathetic is a guy like that? The Tonight Show, which is dying. They're all dying. Where's Johnny Carson? Bring back Johnny. It made you appreciate, right, Uncle Sam? It made you appreciate the greatness of Johnny Carson. I go on a show, and he goes, "Is that your real hair?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Do you mind if I mess it up?" So he grabs it, and he starts really going crazy, right? And everybody laughed, and it was a big thing, and it was a big hit. It was all over the place, and he got great ratings and all. And 6 months later, he went out because he was under pressure to apologize because he humanized Donald.
She said the lawsuit wasn't the death of comedy, it was the rebirth of consequences. Jimmy Kimmel, after years of throwing darts from his desk, was finally learning what it feels like when one of them sticks right back. Rogan and Megan exposed Kimmel's worst nightmare. Not being sued, but being revealed. The man behind the curtain wasn't a bold truth teller, he was a nervous narcissist. Addicted to validation, the laugh track may still run, but the mask had fallen. Joe called it karmic judo. You mock someone long enough, you might just flip yourself flat. And Megan, she called it justice served. Not with malice, but with receipts, lawyers, and a very expensive invoice. The man who used to throw punchlines now looked like he was ducking subpoenas. And the funniest part was that he still didn't get it. The lawsuit wasn't just about one offensive joke. It was a decade-long pattern of smug ridicule that finally had a financial receipt stapled to it. Joe imagined Kimmel sitting in his Hollywood office, sipping oat milk, pacing around while a room full of lawyers explained that no, calling it satire wouldn't magically erase a courtroom.
Last night was the 96th Academy Awards show, and while you might have missed it, there was one clear winner. No, not Oppenheimer. It was sanctimonious leftists for their lead role in pretending they are better than you. Winner number 1, Jimmy Kimmel. For the 4th time, Kimmel hosted the Oscars before an adoring crowd of Hollywood stars who laughed and curried favor with the man.
The same guy who treated late night like a public therapy session was now desperately hoping the judge had Netflix and a soft spot for washed-up comedians. Rogan joked that if Kimmel tried his usual, tearful, made-up apology routine in court, the stenographer might burst out laughing. Then Meghan jumped back in, sharp as ever. Now, pointing out the eerie silence from Kimmel's allies. Where were the comedians, the activists, the celebrities who used to trip over themselves to applaud his political sermons? Gone. Suddenly nowhere to be found. The minute it wasn't safe to clap, the clapping stopped. Meghan called it what? It was the quiet retreat of cowards. Nobody in Kimmel's corner wanted to be dragged into a lawsuit with a 9-figure price tag, so the moral warriors vanished faster than last night's ratings.
Now, I will tell you, he's not the worst. The Daily Show has the worst ratings. They only have 366,000 people watching that show. During the Jon Stewart years, it was over 2 million. Now it's down to 300,000. Seth Meyers, absolutely dreadful. He doesn't even have 1 million, 778,000. I mean, for network television, this is, you don't have to pay for it. It's there when you turn on your TV, you plug it in. That's a dreadful number. Greg Gutfeld on cable, which you do have to pay for, it has more than double the numbers of Seth Meyers. Jimmy Kimmel, 1.5 million averaging, also equally horrible. And then there's The Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon, who back when I was there, 2017-18, he was averaging 2.3 million a night. Now he's down to 1.3 million, Jesse. And he cannot afford the "you are toxic" controversy because he's also pulling in reportedly over $15 million a year. So you got all that money for 1.5 million in audience, which is a nothing. I mean, the middle of the day on Fox News gets that. Or at least used to before the Tucker controversy.
She drew attention to the absurdity of it all. Kimmel, once crowned the conscience of late night, was now just another rich guy in panic mode. The man who once judged everyone else now faced a legal microscope himself. No cameras, no laugh track, just a court docket, a pile of evidence, and a woman who finally said enough. Rogan closed the loop with one final jab. He said Kimmel's legacy wouldn't be the guy who challenged power, but the guy who got sued by the former First Lady of the United States for being too smug to know when he crossed the line in the age of President Trump's second term. Irony wasn't dead. It had just filed a lawsuit. And while the legal system worked out the damages, Joe and Meghan made sure the cultural verdict was already in.